West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est long, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
But we begin with lawmakers continuing to fear for their safety as ongoing security threats at the U.S. Capitol continue to surface. D.C. police arrested a 71-year-old West Virginia man near the Capitol yesterday with a gun, 20 rounds of ammunition, and stop the steal paperwork in his car. Court documents show that Dennis Westover allegedly told police that he was, quote, concerned about the honesty and integrity of the election. He was charged with carrying a gun without a license, possession of unregistered ammunition, and unlawful possession of a firearm, according to an incident report obtained by NBC News. Meanwhile, a bipartisan letter addressed to House leadership yesterday warns that they are easy, quote, targets as personal information, including their home addresses and event schedules, are all public. They are asking for increased funds to this year's member representational allowance, citing that increased threat level. And the acting chief of the U.S. Capitol Police is calling for permanent fencing around the Capitol building and is also requesting, quote, availability of ready backup forces in close proximity to the Capitol, something that wasn't there on January 6th. But a fence won't keep out those who are already allowed into the building. Here's House Speaker Nancy Pelosi speaking yesterday.
What exactly did you mean when you said that the enemy is within? What exactly did
it
you
means
mean by
that we have members of Congress who want to bring guns on the floor and have threatened violence on other members of Congress. What I'm concerned about is the Republican leadership in the House of Representatives, who is willing to overlook, ignore those statements, assigning her to the Education Committee when she has mocked the killing of little children at Sandy Hook Elementary School, when she has mocked the killing of teenagers in high school at the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School. What could they be thinking, or is thinking too generous a word for what they might be doing? It's absolutely appalling.
What Speaker Pelosi was referring to is the recent outcry Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene faced after video surfaced of her following and harassing David Hogg, the gun safety activist who survived a massacre at his high school in Parkland, Florida.
I'm a gun owner. I have a concealed carry permit. I carry a gun for protection for myself, and you are using your lobby and the money behind it and the kids to try to take away my Second Amendment rights. How did you get over 30 appointments with senators? How'd you do that? If school zones were protected with security guards with guns, there would be no mass shootings at schools. And he's a coward. He can't say one word because he can't defend his stance.
A coward who was in a school shooting. And again, this person actually said that was a hoax, that Parkland was a hoax, that it was a false flag, that it was a hoax. Mika, I mean, we've talked to so many of the parents who've endured the worst pain that any parent can endure.
This is not just a one situation deal here. She's also suggested that 2017, the shooting in Las Vegas, the deadliest in the country's history, targeted a mostly conservative audience of country music fans, since it was part of a plot from gun control activists. Green has also written in blog posts that the debunked Pizzagate conspiracy theory, which claimed there was a satanic child sex trafficking ring at a Washington pizza restaurant, might be real. And in a 2017 blog post, Green said the deadly white supremacist rally held in Charlottesville that year was an inside job to further the agenda of the elites. Green has also claimed that a plane never crashed into the Pentagon on 9/11 and said that former President Barack Obama is a Muslim. And then there's this. Downed power lines was the cause of California's deadliest wildfire 2 years ago, when the Camp Fire killed 85 people. But as the fire raged, Marjorie Taylor Greene reportedly wrote in a Facebook post that, quote, "There are all these people who have said they saw what looked like lasers or blue beams of light causing the fires, and pictures and videos." That, according to a screenshot of that post, was shared by liberal media watchdog Media Matters. The post also falsely speculated that Pacific Gas and Electric and then Governor Jerry Brown were involved in causing the fire. It also must be just a coincidence that the fires are burning in the same projected areas that the $77 billion high-speed rail project is to be built, which also happens to be Governor Brown's pet project, Green wrote, according to the screenshot. She's got lots of videos about January 6th, Joe, where she talks about getting ready for this big insurrection. She did a video at the White House.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't even gotten to those yet, which actually are the most relevant to what Nancy Pelosi said. She had a video at the White House talking about whipping people up for January the 6th. We of course, have, which we'll show you, we have her ad where she's holding an AR-15, and she has 3 women of color who are, and what a coincidence that is, that are members of Congress that she says she's going to target, that she's coming after, that obviously causes grave concern.
It is Friday, the 29th of January of 2021, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner, the English Bulldog, is our snoozing sous chef. And our daily special is Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all Nighthawks in the Diner of Life. Boy, Squeaky Burbert and that weird lady, Marjorie Kook. That's what I call her. Marjorie Q. Marjorie Taylor Greene. I will not call her MTG. All right, please. Anyway, they seem to be getting away with quite a bit, and the reason for it is, as Joe and Mika laid out at the top there, they have been pretty much given sucre by the Republican Party. They knew all about them. Any concerns they may have had were quickly quashed by Donald Trump, because both of them were given the green light by the White House. And when it was given the green light by the White House, Donald Trump, you got to do what the guy says. McCarthy went down there yesterday, being Mar-a-Lago. to kiss the guy's ring. What the hell was McCarthy doing? Apparently, Trump still holds sway over the Republican Party because he has a goon squad stormtrooper contingent willing to trash the Capitol for him on a whim. So the Republican Party says, oh, geez, they're supposed to be on our side. We could have got caught up in it. We don't want that happening again. And the only way to keep that from happening again is to just keep doing what that guy wants. And this is a pattern with Republicans. Oh, yes, they come out and talk about law and order, but they're the first ones to be breaking the law and disrupting order. They always talked about you don't negotiate with terrorists. Well, I think what they mean is that you don't negotiate with them because they're going to want what they want, and they're going to get it whether you want them to or not. That's right. So, yeah, you don't negotiate with terrorists. And yet, apparently these Republicans want to negotiate because they're on their side. Yeah. So, what do you do when the enemy is within? Well, I think that probably you would try to, what is the technical term? A braid. You want to scrub it out. Maybe a purge would be in order. Maybe. Yes, there will be a hue and an outcry when we pretty much have to get rid of every Republican in office because, look what they're doing. I mean, we have some stories coming up about what state lawmakers of the Republican ilk are doing to nullify the powers of a Democratic elected governor. Many states are doing this, and this has been a strategy for a while now, and it's really ramping up. So they are an insurgent party. An insurgency only exists when electeds become involved. We have a whole party now embracing violence in politics. They are making it an integral part of their platform. All you have to do is look what's happening in Russia. Okay? that could have been happening here. Yeah. Yeah, throw your opponent in jail. That's what they accuse us of trying to do. But what did that guy Trump bellow for over 4 years? Lock Hillary up. Lock her up. Lock anybody up who disagrees with him. Any news organization that disagrees with him is fake news. Any story that happens to tell the truth that he doesn't agree with was fake. You are the enemy of the people if you think that Donald Trump is a terrible interior designer. So I don't want to talk or hear about comity and unity coming from the insurgent party. The insurgent party needs to be defeated. It needs to be scrubbed from our body politic. And it's not just me saying this. It has to be done. What do you do when a party is totally at odds with every principle of America? Every one. Right down to, yes, individual responsibility. Oh, they harp on individual responsibility. But you know what? Kevin McCarthy said it's not the Republicans' fault that the Capitol was invaded and rioted and breached and seized on January 6th. No, it's every American's fault. And what he meant is that it's our fault, we liberals, because we agitated them too much. They had to respond. They just had to. And how did we agitate them? Well, I guess getting rid of slavery was maybe the beginning, huh? Or was the beginning just simply that each individual can go and vote their own conscience? You can only vote your own conscience when your conscience has been brainwashed, apparently, by the Republican Party. With help from Vlad. It is heartening, though, I have to say, seeing these giant protests in Russia. But what are they doing? What is Russia doing? Well, they're arresting Pussy Riot again. Sort of sounds familiar, doesn't it? Your old go-to. They don't have much else. Let's arrest Pussy Riot because, they like freedom. And when you're running a mob government, freedom is the last thing you want your, charges to have. Especially when they're supposed to be earners and kicking up their earnings to you. Well, there's other good news, other than the fact that the Republican Party is going down now as individuals to kiss the ring of Trump at Mar-a-Lago. That club is losing membership. They say it's so sad. It's sad now. Yeah, well, all sorts of properties across America are taking the Trump sign down. Even though it may be violating a contract. You align yourself with an insurrection, maybe you don't, you might think that's good business. And I will say, it is good business in terms of getting money into the Republican Party. It's not good business to run America. And I think, actually, the aspect of money coming into the GOP is why GOP members like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Squeaky Burbert are pretty much running the Republican Party right now. As AOC said, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez said, McCarthy isn't running the caucus. The caucus of Kooks is running McCarthy. And why? Because McCarthy, as head of the GOP now, wants their mailing list. Insurrection is big business now, apparently, on the right wing. And he wants some of that money. They have to share. And since they have all the power, he's got to do some sort of supplicant. And that's why he went and met with Donnie yesterday. To show the insurgent members of his caucus, Squeaky Burbert and Marjorie Taylor Greene, that it's okay. It's okay. We got your back. So share your mailing list. We need some of that money. Which then goes to the question of what to do with the people that vote these people in. Do we just say, oh, well, it's part of democracy. It's ugly too. Maybe we could use some of the strategies that they have been using to keep duly legal people from voting. I know it's a lot easier when it's by color. And I don't know, maybe we start there. Maybe we find some identifying aspect of their being in which to, profile them and start there. What would some identifying aspects of their being be? I don't know. Maybe flying a Trump flag still might be a clue. We are under a terrorist watch right now, domestic terror watch, and I'd be pretty concerned about people still driving around with Trump flags on their monster trucks, turning that license plate into the authorities. And it won't be local authorities. It'll have to be the FBI, because you just don't know about the local authorities. I think they've been invaded, too, for quite a while. Which is a little interesting to me as well. What about all these police departments? What do they say to their friends in the Proud Boys who are responsible for killing cops in D.C.? You're our friends? Well, maybe. Because I'm sure there's a lot of Nazis in the police department that want to get rid of any other liberal cop that happens to exist in the police department. When it should actually be the other way around. Every Nazi white nationalist in any police department is without a job in policing. And I don't know. We don't want to get them too much into economic anxiety by not having a job and then doing something drastic and extreme. But I would still think that maybe, You advocate an insurrection, you might have a hard time getting a job somewhere. Gee, I know what that's like, and all I did was try to impeach Nixon and fight for civil rights. That followed me for decades, to the point where it was much easier just to make my own business. So I don't want to hear about cancel culture. Some of us have been canceled from the get-go, and we still made something of ourselves and didn't whine in the process. Okay. What's on the rest of the menu here on this fabulous Blue Moon Spirits Friday? Well, yes, Nancy did condemn the GOP for ignoring the enemy within, but I would say they're not ignoring the enemy within because they don't consider the enemy to be the enemy. They look at what we would consider the enemy to be allies. And that's why we are in big trouble, aren't we? Well, on the rest of the menu, fortunately, tens of thousands of Republicans continue to flee the party after the Capitol insurrection. There are some actual level-headed people in the world now, aren't there? Good. Republican state lawmakers around the country moved to curb governors and health officials' emergency powers to keep America safe during a pandemic. I don't get it. The GOP is taking the side of the virus? Well, they're wholly bought by Russia. I guess backing the virus is an obvious thing to do. And the South African variant of COVID-19 has been detected in the United States for the first time. Well, at least Joe's on the job. At least we got that going for us. Good. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where a far-right German extremist was convicted and sentenced to life for the brazen murder of a regional politician who advocated helping refugees. Sounds familiar now, doesn't it? And Secretary of State Antony Blinken said the U.S. is ready to prosecute the man acquitted in Pakistan of Daniel Pearl's murder. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. At netrootsradio.com, off to the right of the page is our chat room link, and the chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly, for doing so. To the left of the chat room link, across the page, to the left, near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you will hopefully notice our link to our Patreon page. And, of course, the reason we have that is the bulk of how we pay for all of this concern here at Netroots Radio comes out of our own wallets. We would be unable to do it without you. And there have been some of you who have been very generous recently. Thank you so much. And also there are a few of you who have been recurring Patreons of Netroots Radio for quite some time, sustaining us, helping us to fulfill our civic duty. And what is that civic duty? Well, you know, afflict the comfortable and comfort the afflicted. And maybe, pull out a few laughs every now and then. Gallows humor? Well, it's still funny, isn't it? Anyway, we thank you for that generosity, and if you out there who are considering maybe doing so in the future, because I know times are tough right now, when you can afford an espresso-type coffee drink, if you could send those funds to us once a month, we stretch those dollars really beyond compare. And as I mentioned, we have a lot of experience doing so. Then we pay our bills, we fly under the radar, as they say. And, we continue fulfilling our civic duty as the founders originally intended, oh, so many years ago. All kidding aside, thank you for your generosity, and thank you for considering to be generous in the future. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that and a lot more, too. Thanks, Tom. I take care of me, and I am at Justice Putnam on Twitter, and you might as well follow me there because that's where I post. Well, actually, I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Co's about 10 minutes before showtime, and then try to get that linked up on social media. And Twitter is part of social media, and you could find it on other social media platforms too, which you know who they are. You know. Follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West, and really, this is important. Do please pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, really wherever podcasts can be found. And if there's some sort of review or rating thing, could you fill that out? Because then it just drives, hopefully, the show up in the search engine somewhere, since there's billions of podcasts out there. Anyway, thank you for all of that. Alrighty, let's get into this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Emily Singer of the American Independent brings us this first offering. Since the deadly riot at the U.S. Capitol on January 6, states across the country have seen a growing trend of Republican voters changing their party registration, with the number of Republican voters disaffiliating from the party climbing into the tens of thousands. And they continue to do so in such bulk numbers. I think it's not making the Republican Party very happy. Well, you reap what you sow. It does seem like something is happening, perhaps in response to the attempted insurrection at the U.S. Capitol. Michael McDonald, an elections expert and professor at the University of Florida, tweeted of the trend of voter registration changes since January 6. Really, it might be? Well, okay. The biggest surge of voters leaving the Republican Party was in Arizona, where nearly 10,000 GOP voters disaffiliated, according to former Senator Jeff Flake. It's a concerning trend for Republicans in a state that is already trending Democratic, with President Joe Biden becoming the first Democrat to carry the state at the presidential level since 1996, and with both of the state's Senate seats now held by Democrats. As of today, 9,944 Arizona Republicans have changed their party registration since the assault on the U.S. Capitol on January 6. Please, fellow Republicans, we cannot continue to excuse former President Trump's behavior and promote falsehoods about the election. Flake, who endorsed Biden over Donald Trump in 2020 despite being a conservative Republican. That's how bad Trump is. And it's not just Arizona seeing an exodus of Republican voters. In North Carolina, more than 6,000 Republicans changed their registration to independent, according to the Charlotte News and Observer. Of course, those of us with a peculiar amount of experience in these matters know that when anybody says they're an independent, it means they're embarrassed to tell everybody they're a Republican. Okay, just say it. Kimberly Reinhart, a longtime North Carolina Republican and former Capitol Hill staffer, is one of those GOP voters who changed their registration. "I didn't leave the party," Reinhart told the News Observer. "The party left me. My belief system and my values remain unchanged." Oh, in other words, you're embarrassed to call yourself a Republican, but you still are. Just making that clear. In Colorado, roughly 4,600 Republicans changed their registration, and Maryland has seen 2,300 Republican leaders or voters leave the party. The Baltimore Sun reported on that. It's unclear whether this trend will continue in the coming weeks and months, but polls show just how precarious of a position Republicans find themselves in, with some defending Trump's behavior in the wake of the insurrection, even though a majority of the country believes Trump shoulders at least some of the blame and should be punished. Some. A Monmouth University poll released on Monday found that 56% of Americans approve of Trump's impeachment. The poll also found that 52% of Americans believe he should be convicted, and 57% said Trump should be barred from ever holding federal office again. I don't think he should ever be, able to run a charity, or, well, maybe he can't. However, Republican voters still support Trump, with 85% of Republicans saying they don't believe Trump should be convicted, because the Republican Party is a cult, and they are a violent cult at that. It leaves Republicans walking a tightrope of trying not to alienate a majority of the country while not alienating their own base, because unlike the majority of the country, the majority of their base would kill them in an instant if they didn't do what the base wanted. Democrats, however, are not going to let Republicans get off easy. There are no consequences in the Republican caucus for violence. There are no consequences for racism, no consequences for misogyny, no consequences for insurrection, and no consequences means that they condone it. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez said Wednesday night of Republicans' refusal to punish Trump and other GOP lawmakers who helped incite the insurrection. It means that silence is acceptance, and they want it because they know it is a core animating political energy for them, Ocasio-Cortez added. David A. Lieb of the Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Irritated by the sweeping use of executive orders during the COVID-19 crisis, state lawmakers around the U.S. are moving to curb the authority of governors and top health officials to impose emergency restrictions such as mask rules and business shutdowns. Excuse me, David. When you say state lawmakers, you mean Republican state lawmakers. And when you say governors, you mean Democratic governors having their power nullified. Please, this is not a both sides thing. The push is underway in such states as Arizona, Michigan, Ohio, Maryland, Kentucky, Indiana, and Pennsylvania, where legislators, Republican legislators, David, are seeking a constitutional amendment to strip the governor of many of his emergency powers. Pennsylvania Republican, we finally get it in the third graph. Republican Senator Wayne Langerhulk said the amendment would, quote, make it unequivocally clear that our General Assembly is a co-equal branch, that we are not a monarchy, and that our voices matter, end quote. Yeah, co-equal branch. No, you're not. You want the power, and you want to take it away from people who are constitutionally mandated to protect the people. Democratic Governor Tom Wolf and some of his counterparts around the country have argued that they need authority to act quickly and decisively against the fast-changing threat. The coronavirus has killed an estimated 430,000 Americans and is going through its most lethal phase yet, despite the rollout of vaccines, with new and more contagious variants from abroad turning up in the U.S. State legislators generally took on lesser roles after the pandemic hit, with many suspending work or adjourning. It has been governors or their top health officials who have set many of the policies, imposing mask mandates, limiting public gatherings, and shutting down dine-in restaurants, gyms, hair salons, and other businesses. Lawmakers in more than half the states have filed bills this year to limit gubernatorial powers during the pandemic and other emergencies. According to the National Conference of State Legislators, most legislators began their sessions this month. Would you please? Republican legislators are doing this. The Democratic ones follow science. Kentucky's Republican-led legislature could consider as soon as next week whether to override Democratic Governor Andy Beshear's vetoes of several bills that would rein in his emergency powers. Wisconsin's GOP-controlled Senate voted earlier this week to repeal Democratic Governor Tony Evers' emergency health order, which would end the state's mask mandate. The Republican-controlled Assembly called off a similar vote in the face of criticism from health, school, and business leaders and concern that it could jeopardize more than $49 million in federal aid. In Michigan, House Republicans have threatened to withhold billions of dollars for schools unless Democratic Governor Gretchen Whitmer cedes her administration's power to prohibit in-person instruction and sports to local health departments. Whitmer called the move cruel and reckless. Now, we all remember that Whitmer was the target of a kidnapping plot last fall by anti-government extremists upset over her coronavirus restrictions. And as we all know, that plot failed because it was discovered. And now the Republicans are just finishing the job. Of the Associated Press bring us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A new variant of the coronavirus emerged yesterday, Thursday, in the United States, posing yet another public health challenge in a country already losing more than 3,000 people to COVID every day. And when we say losing, we mean dead. Let's be clear. The mutated version of the virus, first identified in South Africa, was found in 2 cases in South Carolina. Public health officials said it's almost certain that there are more infections that have not been identified yet. They are also concerned that this version spreads more easily and that vaccines could be less effective against it, so you can rest assured that Republicans are going to want to suppress this information because it might impact them opening up the schools so that more kids can infect grandma, as well as their teachers. The 2 cases were discovered in adults in different regions of the state and do not appear to be connected. Neither of the people infected has traveled recently, and that's frightening, because it means there could be more undetected cases within the state, said Dr. Karutika Kupali, an infectious disease physician at the Medical University of South Carolina in Charleston. It's probably more widespread, the doctor said. The arrival of the variant shows that the fight against this deadly virus is far from over. Dr. Brennan Trexler, South Carolina's interim public health director, said in a statement. Why interim? Because the previous one was run off their job because of threats of violence to them and their family. While more COVID-19 vaccines are on the way, Dr. Bannon continued, supplies are still limited. Every one of us must recommit to the fight by recognizing that we are all on the front lines now. We are all in this together. Viruses constantly mutate, and coronavirus variants are circulating around the globe, but scientists are primarily concerned with the emergence of 3 that researchers believe may spread more easily. Other variants first reported in the United Kingdom and Brazil were previously confirmed in the U.S. As the variants become a potential for greater infection risks in the U.S., pandemic-weary lawmakers, meaning Republicans, and they were weary from the get-go because they don't want to be told what to do. In several states are pushing back against mask mandates, business closures, and other protective orders ordered by governors. And states including Arizona, Michigan, Ohio, Maryland, Kentucky, and Indiana are weighing proposals to limit their governors' abilities to impose emergency restrictions, as we just reported. Governors argue that they need the authority to act swiftly in a crisis, and limitations could slow critical emergency responses. Meanwhile, Nebraska health officials said the state could be days away from lifting restrictions on indoor gatherings, citing a low percentage of COVID-19 hospitalizations. Other states seeing declining infections are also loosening limitations, though experts have warned the public to stay vigilant about masks and social distancing or risk further surges. Just because you get a vaccine doesn't mean that you should become less vigilant, please. We're still in this. And I know it's very important that people go get their hair done, because I'm getting tired of cutting my hair. I really am. And it's very important to go get some mozzarella sticks that you can dunk into some marinara sauce at TGIF. Do people still go there? Why? Anyway, I know that's important. But do you really want that on your gravestone? I had a good life, but I died because I just had to have some mozzarella sticks dumped in marinara. All right, let's get to our break. And when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will, of course, finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. This week, an afternoon in Chicago. Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, named for one of the blues icon's songs, is adapted from the 1984 August Wilson stage play, part of his American Century cycle, the one from the 1920s. The cycle explores, one drama per 20th century decade, how African Americans worked through the mostly white power structure to get ahead. After Wilson's death in 2005, his estate sought out Denzel Washington to bring the plays to the screen. More are supposed to be coming from Netflix. The first was the well-received Fences from 2016, starring Washington and Viola Davis, who brings off Ma Rainey here with a dominance and swagger that's hard to picture any other actress working today pulling off. And she does it with maybe half the screen time of her co-star, the late Chadwick Boseman, who plays an ambitious horn player in Rainey's band. The film has a stagey feel to it, which is probably intentional with the selection of award-winning director George Wolfe, who's best known for his stage work. Most of the action occurs in one stuffy rehearsal room where the dynamics between Levy, the other band members, Ma, and Ma's girlfriend play out. And dynamics there are. A supporting cast, including the white management and studio personnel, deal with opportunity, celebrity, and the blinding frustration of 1920 Chicago, which, for African Americans, may have lacked burning crosses, but included plenty of other subtle and not-so-subtle racism. Way past a biopic, what we see in Ma Rainey's Black Bottom are seminal moments of a newly assertive black culture, with the characters looking inward painfully to find themselves in the context of a broader mission, one which we all know is yet to be fully achieved. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. Catch up with us at take2moviereview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Christopher Intagliata. Cattle are a common sight in Indian cities, but some end up in busy intersections and on highways, where they cause accidents and traffic jams.
From blocking traffic to damaging greens in residential colonies, untended cattle have become a nuisance in Delhi.
And the nuisance extends beyond Delhi.
All these problems is very intense in many Indian cities.
Atanu Pati studies animal behavior at Pandit Ravishankar Shukla University in Raipur, that's in central India. He and his colleagues wanted to find out just how many cows lived on the streets of Raipur, so they took a census. They divided the city into 163 grids, each consisting of 1 square kilometer. Then they randomly selected 20 of those grids and started counting.
We used 2 methods. One is a direct head count.
The other was photographic. They'd take pictures in those same grids over a few days and count the cows they may have missed. By studying those slices of the city, they extrapolated the bovine population of Raipur to be about 35,000, or at least 1 street cow for every 54 human residents. The details appear in the journal PLOS ONE. The researchers write that the cattle head count is a first step to, quote, mitigate the cattle menace on the street. Next, Pati says they'll share their findings with the city government. And since many of the cows do have owners who bring them in to milk, he said the city may try to encourage people to keep a tighter leash on their livestock.
This is one thing. And the other thing is that suppose the cows are ownerless, they don't have any owner, so then they will try to rehabilitate them in some places where they can provide food and everything.
He says they'll continue counting in other Indian cities, if they can rustle up the funding. Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Christopher Intagliata.
I'm probably okay to have one more drink before I drive home. I'm probably okay. I open the window to stay alert. Probably okay. I just popped some gum in my mouth.
Step out of the car, please.
I probably made a mistake.
Probably okay isn't okay when it comes to drinking and driving. If you see a warning sign, stop and call a cab, a car, or a friend. Buzzed driving is drunk driving. A message brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1912. That was the day striking worker Anna Lopiazzo was shot and killed by local police during the pivotal Bread and Roses strike in Lawrence, Massachusetts. In what is considered one of the most important strikes in American labor history, the industrial workers of the world had organized a strike that brought out more than 30,000 textile mill workers at the American Woolen Company. Workers had been on strike for most of the month, picketing, marching, giving speeches, and stopping scabs. Their banners demanded a living wage and dignity, bread and roses. That day, there were workers' parades among pitched battles between strikers, police, and scabs. Gunfire erupted. According to Big Bill Haywood, 19 witnesses saw police officer Oscar Benoit shoot Anna Lopiazzo. The shooting provided the mill owners with an opportunity to crack down on the strike. Martial law was instituted, and all public meetings and marches were banned. The leading IWW strike organizers, John Edor and Arturo Giovannetti, were arrested for her murder, despite the fact that they were 2 miles away from the scene. Though they were eventually acquitted, their imprisonment removed them from directing the day-to-day work of the strike. But who was Anna Lopiazzo? According to Bruce Watson, author of Bread and Roses, Mills, Migrants, and the Struggle for the American Dream, if America had a tomb of the unknown immigrant paying tribute to the millions of immigrants known only to God and distant cousins compiling family trees, Anna Lopiazzo would be a prime candidate to lie in it. And indeed she was for 88 years, until retired IBEW 2321 business manager David Morris worked to get a headstone decorated with the Bread and Roses symbol of grain stalks and a rose for her pauper's grave.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. You know we are all Nighthawks in the Diner of Life. We always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, because there's a lot more of America where we come from. And it is currently, we're under cloudy conditions with, it's 35 degrees Fahrenheit outside at this very moment. Expecting highs only in the low 40s, maybe if we get there. A small chance of precipitation, and cloudy skies should prevail throughout the day. Winds light and variable. Overcast tonight with lows in the low to mid 30s. Winds light and variable. And a small increase in a chance of precipitation. But tomorrow, we'll have cloudy skies, highs near 50. Winds will be picking up out of the southeast at 5 to 10 miles per hour, bringing with it over a half an inch of rain overnight. And then on Saturday, we're expecting over an inch and a half. We are looking at maybe some snow coming on Tuesday, but we'll keep apprised of that. Confirmed cases of coronavirus in Jackson County in the southern part of Oregon now stands at 7,291, with 98 confirmed deceased, both, though increasing dramatically, and everybody wants to open up gyms now. Those are undercounts. Look what happened in New York. Okay, just as an example. Pollen right outside the window here in Rogue River proper is rated at none. The air quality index for the region is good at 24 parts per million, and the daytime UV index is a wintertime low at 2. Barometric pressure is falling at 29.87 inches. Visibility is up to 6 miles because we're over 5 miles, you see. And relative humidity is at 98%. So, yeah, we're not getting that dry. Not indeed. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations. Crowdsourced by a crowd from around the world. London is... London is 52 and mostly cloudy. Paris is 51 and cloudy. Rome is 57 and mostly cloudy. Kyiv is 29 and partly cloudy. Kabul is 38 with its wintertime smoke. Hong Kong is 58 and clear. Tokyo is 36 and clear. Sydney, Australia is 70 degrees and clear because they're still in summer, you know. San Francisco, California is 42 degrees and fair. And New York is a very, 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 very chilly 18 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, watch for frostbite now, please. 18 degrees Fahrenheit in New York right at this very moment. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations, crowdsourced by a crowd from around the world. The anonymous staff at the Associated Press bring us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A far-right extremist in Germany was convicted and sentenced to life in prison yesterday for the murder of a regional politician who had advocated helping refugees, a brazen killing that shocked the country. In its verdict against 47-year-old Stefan Ernst, the Frankfurt State Court noted the particular severity of the crime, meaning that he will likely not be eligible for release after 15 years, as is typical under German law. During his trial, Ernst admitted to a June 1, 2019 shooting of Walter Lübcke, a member of Chancellor Angela Merkel's party, who led the regional administration in the Kassel area of central Germany, though he gave 3 different versions of the events. Lübcke was targeted because he had been outspoken in favor of helping refugees. Prosecutors said Ernst had attended a 2015 town hall event where the politician had defended the German government's decision to allow hundreds of thousands of asylum seekers in the country. The court found that Ernst projected xenophobia onto Dr. Lübcke. Ernst shot Lübcke on the politician's porch, and he died hours later. The German government warned after the Lübcke killing and other attacks, including one on a synagogue on Yom Kippur, Judaism's holiest day in October of 2019, that far-right extremism posed a significant security threat in the country. But unlike Germany, the fascists and Nazis in the United States were able to suppress those reports for, well, a couple of decades almost, huh? An accomplice who prosecutors allege was with Ernst at the scene of the crime, identified only as Marcus H. due to Germany privacy laws, was convicted of weapons violations and sentenced to 18 months probation.
Je te donne c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mais automne, quand les feuilles tombent partout, si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Anonymous Reuters staff bring us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The U.S. is prepared to prosecute in the United States the man acquitted by Pakistan's top court of the murder of American journalist Daniel Pearl. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said the Pakistani Supreme Court's decision to acquit Ahmed Amar Saeed Sheikh is an affront to terrorism victims everywhere, including in Pakistan, Blinken said in a statement, adding that Washington expected Pakistan to review its legal options to ensure justice is served. And it looks like they're probably going to bring the guy here. I believe we have an extradition treaty. Or really, do we need one anymore? All right, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day and also the week. But you do know Netroots Radio will broadcast on, even though now with Joe and Kamala in the Oval Office, it should be sleepier times on the weekends than it's been for the last 4 years. But rest assured, the insurgency still continues, and we better stay awake for that. So we're going to meet up on Monday for River City Hash Monday, so do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night, and really all weekend for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we'll meet up here on Monday, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. De novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.